Early voting is now happening in the state of Georgia, and on its first day, broke records. According to The Hill, Georgia voters cast more than 300,000 ballots the first day of early voting, according to officials. Officials like Gabriel Sterling. The chief operating officer of Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's office shared in a post on the social media platform X that the Peach State has shattered its record. Quote, with its record-breaking first day of early voting and accepted absentees, we have had just over 328,000 total votes cast so far. He also noted that the previous record was set in 2020 when 136,000 people opted to vote early. Over 300,000 votes cast today, Sterling wrote in another post, that's 123% higher than the old record for the first day. Great job, counties and voters. That is huge. Okay. Now it's important to note that in 2020, President Biden won the state by a razor-thin margin. So the more people that get out the vote, the better chance I believe the Democrats have. That said, obviously I know that not all early votes are going to go to Democrats. Turns out Republicans also vote early too. I know. That said, what we've seen typically before is Democrats voting earlier and by mail more often than Republicans do. And that's because you've had a lot of Republicans say insane things about mail-in ballots, which aren't true, and voting early. So, and they generally tend to restrict people and encourage people, their own voters, not to do those things that are easier. Yeah. Now, that said, a recent poll by Gallup published on October 9th found that 46% of Democrats planned on voting early, compared to 31% of Republicans. So, now there's been Republicans that have been saying, actually, we should probably vote early. Great, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's fine, because, again, there's no evidence of fraud in early voting or mail-in voting, so it's perfectly fine. Now, that said, that's nationally 51% Harris leading Trump to 43. Georgia, it's a bit tighter. And remember, we have a system that doesn't, count the popular vote, which is a strange thing. But we have the Electoral College. I believe we're the only country left that actually still uses something like the Electoral College. Other modern democracies have actually moved to being more democratic and having direct elections, but not in America, where we have DEI for Republicans. That's essentially what the Electoral College is. But now, since the Electoral College is important, you have states like Georgia that are swing states. And so in Georgia, the polling's a bit tighter. You actually have Trump leading Harris 48.3 to 47%, according to the Hill Decision Desk HQ's polling aggregate. Still, you've got record early turnout, which is a good thing. I mean, I can't find anything wrong. Even if Trump wins the state, that's just how democracy goes. I mean, you gotta love it. Even if you don't win, it's still democracy. It's still the voice of the people. Okay? And that's it. Now, Raffensperger had predicted the record turnout earlier in the day, noting that the state had worked overtime to ensure early voting could begin and absentee ballots would be delivered as planned, despite the damage from Hurricane Helene, which had damaged parts of Georgia and Florida and North Carolina. So now, he said, quote, when you think back to where we were 2.5 weeks ago, this is a cause for celebration. So many people said, what's going to happen? There's no way you'll have elections starting in Georgia on time. And then he added that in a press conference that early voting started on time in all 159 counties in the state. And I think that is something to be incredibly proud of. And not only that, but it's a good sign that people are motivated to get out and vote. In fact, Dr. Thomas Gift, an associate professor of political science and the director of the Center on U.S. Politics at the University of College London, spoke to Newsweek. Here's what he said. Early voting can give some indication into voter enthusiasm and likely voter turnout on election day. Higher rates of requests to cast ballots before November 5th show that voters are motivated and care about the outcome. However, it's important to be careful about reading too much into whether early voting advantages Trump or Harris. So I do believe that it probably helps Harris. Okay. Motivation, getting voters to turn out. When more voters do turn out, generally that tends to favor Democrats more than it does Republicans, especially younger, new voters. Okay, and I don't know the demographic breakdown of these 300,000 early voters, but I could just make the assumption here that a lot of them are Democrats. That said, because those are the ones generally who are more excited this time around. Whereas again, this is the third election that you have Donald Trump on the ticket. So now that said, he continues. The conventional wisdom has largely been that streamlining voting processes to make it easier for Americans tends to favor Democrats. Yet while that may be true in some cases, the logic doesn't always hold. For instance, much of early voting occurs by mail. However, the best evidence from political science suggests voting by mail doesn't provide a clear edge to either party. So that's why it always kind of frustrated me to see Republicans restricting mail-in ballots. All right. And when you see Donald Trump saying, "Oh, don't the mail-in ballots are all fraudulent," no, they're not. There's no evidence that mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, are all fraudulent. Okay. But the mules. Think of the mules. Will somebody please talk about the mules? What mules? Okay, that's not real. It's not a real thing. Okay. No. What this is that early voting doesn't actually give any side any real advantage. It all comes down to how many people turn out and can actually vote. The reason that more voting tends to and looser voting laws tends to help Democrats is because there are more Democrats. Okay, simply put, there are more Democrats in the country. There are more people that vote for Democrats, more people that actually like Democrats' policies. Okay, and so when turnout is high, generally it tends to favor Democrats because more people agree with them on policy positions. But that said, when it comes to these policies strictly being in there to give one side an advantage, well, that's not true. Everyone's allowed to use mail-in ballots. Everyone's allowed to vote early in states that allow it and that have early voting. And so I don't see how that innately gives one side an advantage. It all depends on who's using it, right? Now, that said, Georgia's really interesting because they're a swing state now, okay? And Trump's really been trying to win it, and he still might. By the way, the election board has been trying to help him out with that by changing the voting rules right before an election. Now, fortunately, the judge there, I've talked about him quite a few times now, Robert McBurney, he's made some rulings to ensure that Trump and his allies are not able to rig the process. Okay? He recently ruled that counties cannot refuse to certify elections, which, again, is insane because part of Trump's plan was, if, say, Harris wins a certain county, then we're just not going to count those counties. Why? What's their justification? I don't know. Something voter fraud. And that's all they would have to do to then allow the person that's in charge of elections in that county to say, "Oh, don't count us. No, don't count us. Kamala Harris won, and it's probably fraud." Do you have any evidence of that? No. And guess what? Under those rules, you wouldn't need any evidence to prove it. And so that's why McBurney's like, no, this is ridiculous. That's just, no, I'm striking that down, okay? There's nothing in the state constitution that allows for you to do that. They have to be certified. They have to be counted, okay? Not only that, but he also ruled that a rule requiring hand count ballots on election night cannot take effect before this election, which again would take forever, okay? requiring hand-counted ballots. Again, there's a time and place for doing hand-counted ballots, right? And mainly that's for when elections are very close and you want to do a recount, do a hand recount. Totally fine. Totally fine. It's one of the tools that, either side can use to, basically see the correct result, to see if they're okay. Is there, any ballots that we missed, or are there, ballots that are not acceptable, that haven't been filled out correctly, things like that. Okay, that's part of election challenges, and both sides have the right to be able to do that. Okay, that said, just making it mandatory would again delay the election results massively, and just sow distrust and discord in our electoral system. And that's the last thing that we need right now. So there's those changes that he had rejected, among others. So it was very clear that Trump and his allies in the state were definitely trying to tilt things in their favor. Fortunately, they're not able to. And also, quite fortunately to Harris supporters, got massive enthusiasm and massive early voting turnout. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.